Welcome, my favorite people, the rare gems. Real strength isn't loud, it's calm when chaos is begging for a reaction. Let's be honest, emotional maturity isn't flashy, it doesn't come with applause or validation. It's quiet, it's measured, it shows up when people expect you to explode, and instead, you take a deep breath, say less, and walk away with your dignity untouched. That's what Sigma females do, and that's exactly why people can't stop talking about you. They thought they could push your buttons. They expected drama. They were ready for a messy back and forth, maybe even hoped for it. But what they got was a woman who didn't need to prove a single thing. A woman who knew her worth and refused to lower herself just to get a point across. That level of self-control, it hits different. Because in a world where everybody wants to be seen, you were unbothered by the spotlight. You handled it with grace, quietly, powerfully. And here's the truth. That kind of behavior throws people off, especially the ones who live off of drama, chaos, and control. You made them face their own immaturity simply by refusing to play their game. That's not just impressive, that's elite. So if you're wondering why they're still whispering, still watching, still rattled, it's because you reminded them of something they're not used to. A woman who doesn't need attention to be powerful. A Sigma female who can walk away without noise and still leave a lasting impact. You're not hard, you're solid. And there's a big difference. Let's get started, the rare gems. Number 1, you killed their narrative with your peace. They thought they had you all figured out. They told people you were unstable, bitter, dramatic, even dangerous. They painted this messy picture of you, expecting you to live up to it. All they needed was one outburst, one emotional reaction, one wrong move, and boom, their story would be confirmed. But you didn't give it to them. You didn't scream. You didn't cry publicly, you didn't post vague quotes or try to clear your name on social media. You just kept moving. Quiet, calm, focused, and that's what killed their narrative. Not a loud defense, not a desperate explanation, just peace, just silence, just growth. They underestimated you because they assumed you'd fall apart trying to defend yourself. But instead, you let them keep talking while you kept glowing up. And now, they're stuck. Their version of you doesn't match reality anymore. The image they tried to sell doesn't hold weight, because your actions speak louder than any gossip ever could. That's the thing about peace. It's loud in its own way. It doesn't need to argue. It doesn't need to explain. It just exists, and it exposes everything false standing next to it. When you stay composed, when you stop entertaining the nonsense, you make it impossible for their lies to breathe. You strip their story of power. And the beauty is, you didn't even try to prove them wrong. You weren't performing for anyone. You were just being yourself, real, grounded, and unbothered. That quiet strength, it hit harder than any verbal comeback ever could. Now they're left scrambling, trying to adjust the story, trying to find new ways to spin it. But it's too late. You've outgrown their version of you, and everyone sees it. This is what makes you different. You don't fight fire with fire. You just take away the oxygen and let their story burn itself out. That's not just maturity, that's power. Sigma power. Number 2, you responded with calm facts, not emotional fireworks. When most people feel attacked, they blow up. They shout, over-explain, defend every little thing, or spiral into emotional chaos just to be heard. But not you. You didn't let the heat of the moment drag you down into their mess. You stayed cool, sharp, and precise. No yelling, no clapping back, just calm facts. And that cut deeper than any dramatic outburst ever could. They expected a fight. They were banking on it. Because people who operate in drama always assume you'll meet them on their level. But when you responded with truth, clarity, and composure, it threw them off completely. You didn't need to yell to make your point. You let the facts speak, and they did all the damage without raising your voice. That's what power really looks like. It's not loud, it's not performative. It's knowing your truth so well that you can deliver it calmly and still shake the ground they're standing on. You didn't try to humiliate them, you didn't call them names, you simply laid out the facts and then let them sit in it. And that's what burned them. Because there's something about calm that's unsettling to people who thrive on conflict. When you stay composed, it highlights how unbalanced they really are. It exposes their need for chaos, and it makes their emotional outbursts look even more immature. You didn't feed the fire, you froze it. And that kind of self-control, that's a superpower. It told them everything they needed to know. You're not easily shaken, you're not reactive, you don't lose your footing when things get messy, you stand even taller. You don't chase emotional dominance, you lead with truth, logic, and grace. And the truth is, your silence between those calm facts, that's what really echoed. Because nothing burns louder than composure in a room full of noise. Number 3, you didn't explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. At some point, you realize something powerful. Not everyone deserves an explanation, especially not the ones who twist your words, question your intentions, and pretend not to understand you, just so they can keep painting you as the villain. You saw through the act. You saw that no matter what you said, they'd already made up their minds. And instead of wasting your time trying to clear the air, you chose something far more powerful. You let them stay confused. That shook them. Because people like that expect you to defend yourself. They want you to exhaust yourself trying to prove you're not what they say you are. They feed off that drama. But when you didn't take the bait, when you chose peace over performance, it made them uncomfortable. It made them realize you were done playing the role they cast for you. And let's be honest, there's a certain kind of freedom that comes with not explaining yourself. You're no longer trying to be seen through someone else's broken lens. You stop bending to fit into someone's limited view of you. And when you do that, you start standing in your truth, firm, unbothered. And that energy, that's rare, that's Sigma energy. You knew that your value doesn't depend on their understanding. You didn't beg to be heard. You didn't argue to be seen. You simply chose to walk away with your dignity intact. And they didn't know what to do with that. People expect chaos, but you gave them clarity. Not for them, but for yourself. The truth is, explaining yourself to someone who refuses to listen is like talking to a wall and expecting it to grow ears. You figured that out, and you chose yourself instead. That kind of self-respect, it scares people who rely on your need for approval. You've outgrown the need to be understood by everyone, and that's what makes you untouchable. Number 4, you took accountability where they never expected you to. You did something most people aren't brave enough to do. You owned your part. Not to win anyone over, not to make peace with them, but because you value growth more than looking perfect. You looked at your actions, your tone, your choices, and said, yeah, that part was on me. And just like that, you flipped the script. They didn't see it coming. They expected you to deflect, deny, or blame someone else like most people do. That would have made things easier for them. They could have kept calling you defensive, difficult, or delusional. But your honesty, your willingness to say, I could have handled that better, it left them stunned. Why? Because insecure people only feel powerful when they're pointing fingers. But when you take accountability, you take their ammo, and you turn it into wisdom. What they didn't understand is that real strength isn't about pretending to be flawless. It's about being honest enough to say, I've grown since then. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You weren't trying to fix what couldn't be fixed. You simply decided to be better, for you, and that shook them. Because taking accountability is a quiet kind of power. It means you're no longer controlled by guilt, shame, or ego. It means you're self-aware enough to call yourself out before anyone else can. And when you do that, you become untouchable. Nobody can drag you with the truth if you've already owned it. That kind of maturity makes people uncomfortable, especially the ones who never look in the mirror. You made them realize how far they are from that kind of courage. And that's why they can't stop thinking about you. Not because you were loud, but because you were real. You didn't take accountability to prove you're the bigger person. You took it because you're on a different path, a higher one where growth beats ego every single time. That's not weakness, that's Sigma-level strength. Number 5, you responded, not reacted. They tried to get a rise out of you. They wanted to see you lose your cool, say something reckless, or act out of character, because that would have made it easier for them to justify their own bad behavior. But instead of giving them that satisfaction, you did something that threw them off completely. You stayed calm. You didn't match their energy. You controlled yours. And that shook them. See, there's a difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is instant. It's emotional, raw, and often messy. It's what they were hoping for. But you chose to respond. That means you took a moment, you processed what was happening, and you answered with intention, not impulse. And that right there? That's emotional intelligence at its finest. What most people don't realize is that staying calm in the face of disrespect is one of the hardest things to do. It takes insane self-awareness to look someone in the eye, know exactly what they're doing, and still choose not to sink to their level. You didn't stay quiet because you were weak. You stayed quiet because you were focused. And that made them feel exposed. It made them realize you weren't playing their game, and worse, you were watching them self-destruct without lifting a finger. People underestimate the power of composure. They think the loudest one wins. But when you keep your cool in a heated situation, it's like holding a mirror up to someone's immaturity. It shows them just how emotionally reckless they really are. Your calmness became a statement, not just about who they are, but about who you are becoming. You proved that control isn't about keeping others in line. It's about keeping yourself in check, no matter how chaotic it gets around you. And that's what makes you different. That's what makes you a Sigma. You don't chase drama, you rise above it. And that is why people can't stop talking about how you handled them. Number 6. You rebuilt without broadcasting the blueprint. You didn't make a big announcement. You didn't post your pain or your plans. While everyone else was busy talking, oversharing, and looking for attention, you went quiet. Not because you were lost, but because you were working, silently, consistently. And that silence, that's what made your comeback so loud. You didn't need the world to see the broken pieces. You didn't ask for sympathy or explain why you were gone. You just disappeared, handled your business, and came back different, calmer, stronger, sharper. The kind of change that doesn't need a caption. And that's what shook people the most. They were waiting for the drama. They expected you to spiral. Maybe they even hoped you would. But you gave them nothing. No emotional rants, no pity party, no watch me glow post. You just focused on rebuilding, brick by brick in private. You made the pain your fuel and turned the silence into your strategy. Then you showed up. New energy, new boundaries, new peace. Not loud, but undeniable. That's what makes people uneasy. They can't figure out how you did it because you didn't leave a trail. They can't copy what they didn't see. And that's the power of moving in silence. You didn't rebuild to prove anything to anyone. You did it for you, for your peace, your growth, your future. And because you didn't announce every step, people are now stuck guessing, trying to understand how you went from broken to bulletproof without ever asking for applause. That's the Sigma mindset. Quiet grind, loud results, no need for validation, no craving for attention, just deep, internal work that speaks for itself. You didn't glow up for show. You healed, grew, and leveled up because you were done surviving. You were ready to live. And now, without saying a word, your presence speaks volumes. You are the blueprint, and you didn't have to broadcast a thing. Number 7. You didn't weaponize their secrets, even when you could. You knew things, real things, the kind of personal truths they shared when they were vulnerable, when they trusted you, when they never imagined the two of you would end up on opposite sides. And when everything fell apart, they panicked, not because of what you'd done, but because of what you could. They expected revenge, a call-out, a cold expose, maybe even some petty public payback because that's how they would have handled it. But you took a breath and walked away with your integrity intact and their secrets still safe. You didn't do it because they deserved your protection. You did it because you deserved your peace. You weren't about to lower yourself just to get even. You weren't interested in playing dirty even when it would have been easy. That kind of self-control, that kind of class, that's not weakness. That's power. See, it's one thing to hold your tongue when you have nothing to say. It's something else entirely when you could destroy someone and still choose not to. That takes restraint. That takes emotional intelligence. That takes a level of self-respect most people only pretend to have. And the crazy part? That quiet strength, it stuck with them. Long after the silence, long after the distance, they're still thinking about how you didn't drag them, how you didn't stoop to their level, how you handled something messy with grace, and never once used their past against them. That left a deeper impression than any revenge could have. Because now, even if they speak your name recklessly, they know deep down you were the real one. You could have humiliated them, but you chose to be better, not bitter. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you unforgettable. You didn't choose revenge. You chose dignity, and that's the kind of move that echoes louder than any drama ever could. Number 8, you let them keep the last word, but you took the last power move. They thought they won. They tossed one last insult, dropped one more sarcastic jab, or made that final passive-aggressive comment, and waited for you to bite. They wanted a reaction, a clapback, a scene, but you gave them none of it. You just looked at them, maybe even smiled a little, and walked away. And that silence? That hit harder than anything you could have said. See, immature people think having the last word means they've got the upper hand, that they won the argument. But real strength isn't about who talks last. It's about who holds their peace when it matters most. And you understood something they never will. Silence is a decision, a power move, a message that doesn't need words. Because when someone throws shade and you don't flinch, it makes them look small. It exposes their need to feel superior. But you showed you're beyond that. You're no longer interested in proving yourself to people who just want to feel right, not actually be right. You gave them the illusion of victory, while you walked away with your energy, your dignity, and your peace untouched. Letting them have the last word wasn't weakness. It was a conscious choice to disengage from something beneath you. You weren't avoiding conflict. You were refusing to entertain nonsense. That quiet exit was your mic drop. It told them everything. I'm not here to compete with your chaos. And the wild part? That silence stayed with them. Long after you left, they kept replaying it, overthinking it, wondering why you didn't respond. That non-reaction created a louder echo than any comeback ever could. It shifted the power dynamic, without you lifting a finger. Because here's the truth. The one who walks away with peace is the one who wins. And in that moment, you made it clear you're not here for ego games. You're here to protect your peace. And that's the ultimate power move. Number 9, you didn't take their bait. You broke the cycle. They poked, they pushed. They said things they knew would strike a nerve. And they waited for you to explode, cry, snap, or fold. That was their pattern. Stir up chaos, drag you into it, then play the victim when you react. But this time, you didn't give them what they were hunting for. You didn't bite. You saw it for what it was, bait. And instead of reacting, you stayed still, collected, unbothered. And that right there, that's when everything shifted. Because nothing confuses a manipulator more than someone who refuses to join the circus. They expected drama. You gave them silence. They wanted your peace, your energy, your attention, and you gave them none of it. You broke the cycle, and in doing that, you took away their control. It wasn't about being passive. It was about being powerful enough to not entertain nonsense. You didn't match their chaos. You made them sit in it alone. You didn't argue back. You let their own behavior echo around them without your voice softening the blow. That silence? That made them uncomfortable, because suddenly they had to face the truth without your reaction to distract them from it. Most people don't realize how much power there is in not responding, in choosing to walk away when someone's trying to pull you into their storm. You showed them that your peace isn't for sale, that your emotions are not a puppet for their games. And when someone thrives on control, watching you detach is the worst kind of loss. You didn't win with words, you won with composure, and that scares people who are used to pulling strings. Because once they realize you can't be provoked, they lose their power over you completely. And now, they're stuck with their own noise while you move forward, calm, clear, and completely free. Number 10. You didn't turn it into a performance. No vague quotes aimed at them. No emotional outbursts on social media. No pulling people into your side of the story just to prove a point. You didn't go on a digital rant or start a sympathy tour. You kept it private, quiet, and real. And that shook them more than any public meltdown ever could. Because in today's world, people are quick to turn pain into a show. Every heartbreak becomes a thread. Every falling out becomes content. But you didn't take that route. You chose maturity over attention. You handled the situation like an adult. without the audience, without the mess, without needing to be seen as the victim. That kind of emotional restraint, it unsettles people who thrive on drama. They wanted a reaction they could point to, something to screenshot, share, or twist. They expected you to start the typical war, posting indirects, dragging mutual friends into the tension, or throwing public shade. But you gave them none of that. You just bowed out without noise. And that silence was louder than anything you could have said. See, when you refuse to perform for the crowd, it forces people to sit with the truth without distractions. You didn't give them anything to twist. No scenes, no spectacle, just facts and distance. And when you handle conflict like that with quiet strength, it exposes how immature the other side really is. People don't know what to do when you choose dignity over drama. They don't know how to process grace under fire. It makes them uncomfortable because it shows them what real self-control looks like, what it means to not need revenge, what it means to walk away with your integrity fully intact. And while they're still busy trying to make noise to feel powerful, you're already miles ahead, peaceful, composed, and completely uninterested in proving anything to anyone. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. And that kind of strength, it doesn't need an audience. Number 11. You handled them like a grown woman and left them to deal with their inner child. You could have matched their energy. You could have gone low, tossed insults, slammed doors, or played mind games, but you didn't. Instead, you stayed grounded, steady, and clear-headed. You responded with emotional maturity, not to protect them, but to protect yourself. You weren't interested in proving who could hurt who more. You were focused on protecting your peace. They came at you with wounded pride and childish behavior, tantrums in disguise. They tried to guilt-trip you, manipulate the narrative, shift blame, and make you chase after validation. But you didn't take the bait. You didn't treat the situation like a playground fight. You handled it like a grown woman, with quiet confidence and unshakable self-respect. And that, right there, is what stunned them. Because when someone's emotionally underdeveloped, they expect you to meet them where they are, in the mess. They're used to cycles, react, retaliate, repeat. But you stepped back, not out of weakness, but out of strength. You saw their patterns, and instead of trying to fix them or feed them, you let them keep their chaos. You refused to play mother to someone who refused to grow up. That's why it shook them so hard. You didn't yell, you didn't explain, you didn't stay and try to fix what was clearly broken. You simply stepped out of the ring, and that silence made more noise than any argument ever could. You made them sit with their own mess, and that's the real punishment. Because now, they're forced to face the truth. You weren't like the others. You didn't act like a wounded child. You acted like a woman who knows herself. A woman who knows that walking away without bitterness is a power move few can master. And that kind of maturity, it doesn't just shake them, it makes them reflect, long after you're gone. Conclusion: why they're still stuck on how you handled it. Here's the truth. When people talk about Sigma females, they often miss the part that really matters. It's not about being cold, distant, or mysterious for the sake of it. It's about having the kind of inner strength that doesn't need approval to stand tall. The kind of maturity that doesn't scream, doesn't beg, and doesn't shrink just to make others comfortable. And that's what left them shaken. You didn't win with noise. You didn't clap back. You didn't perform your pain or parade your healing. You just handled it. Like a woman who knows who she is, like someone who's been through enough to recognize when peace is more valuable than being right. And people can't stop thinking about it because deep down, they know what they witnessed wasn't typical. It wasn't petty. It wasn't performative. It was real, grounded maturity, and that's rare in a world addicted to drama. So here's your reminder. Your calm was not weakness. Your silence wasn't surrender. And your emotional discipline, that was power most people don't even understand yet. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You're not here to waste energy proving anything to people who are committed to missing the point. You're built different, for depth, not attention, for peace, not popularity, for growth, not games. That's what makes you a Sigma female. So keep moving how you move. Keep handling pressure like it's just part of the process. Keep choosing grace when you could choose chaos. Because that kind of strength doesn't just scare the ones who tried to shake you. It inspires the ones who are learning how to hold their own. You didn't just survive the moment, you elevated from it. And that's why they're still talking. Thank you for watching The Rare Gems, and God bless you.